Dejected Omega fed a pup every day. One day, 4 black wolves pulled up to her cabin. Somewhere far off, a river whispered over stones, and the faint cries of birds echoed through the hollow spaces of the woods. In the midst of this silent wilderness, a small cabin sat, almost swallowed by ivy and moss, its wooden walls weathered by years of storms and snow. Inside, a young woman moved with careful, deliberate motions. Her hair, dark as the night without stars, was loosely tied, falling in soft waves over her shoulders. Her eyes, gray and watchful, scanned the small cabin as she tidied the hearth. Every object told a story. A worn blanket folded neatly, a few simple dishes stacked in order, and a small wooden box containing a handful of dried herbs. But what mattered most was the little creature lying in the corner, a pup, small and trembling with fur the color of pale ash. Leora knelt beside the pup, her fingers brushing over its soft coat. "Here, little one," she whispered. "Eat. Grow strong." The pup wagged its tail and nuzzled against her palm, trusting her in a way no human had ever trusted her. Leora smiled faintly, the corners of her lips tinged with sadness. She had been an Omega once, part of a nearby wolf pack, but the pack had rejected her. They had called her weak, unworthy, someone who did not belong among them. The humiliation had cut deeper than any bite or claw, so she had fled, choosing solitude over the cold judgment of the pack. The forest became her home, the trees her companions, and the little pup her heart. Every day she fed the pup, watched it grow, and taught it the ways of the forest, where to find water, how to hide when danger came, and the importance of trust. In return, the pup gave her loyalty and warmth. Sometimes, when the wind howled, she would speak aloud to the empty cabin, as if telling her thoughts to the shadows. "One day," she murmured, "someone will understand. Someone will not fear the weak." That morning, Leora carried a small bowl of porridge to the pup. The forest was quiet, unusually so, and she paused at the edge of the clearing, listening. The birds were silent. The wind held its breath. Something was out there. A rustling broke the stillness, sharp and deliberate. Leora froze, heart hammering. From between the trunks, 4 shapes emerged. Wolves, large, black, and imposing, moving with a grace that seemed almost unnatural. Their eyes glimmered like amber fire in the pale light. The pup whimpered, hiding behind her legs, and Leora stepped forward protectively. The largest wolf, with a thick mane that rippled like shadowed water, stopped a few paces away. Its gaze fixed on her with an intensity that made her shiver. She had seen wolves before, but never like these. There was something in their eyes, something intelligent, almost human, and yet wild and dangerous. Leora clenched her jaw, trying to steady her voice. Who are you?" she asked softly, though she knew they would not answer. Wolves did not speak like humans. The alpha, the largest of the 4, took a slow, measured step toward her. The pup growled, small but determined, and Leora held it close. The wolf sniffed, head tilting, nostrils flaring. Then, instead of attacking, it gave a low, curious growl. Not a sound of hunger, not a threat. Recognition. Leora felt her pulse quicken. Her mind raced, recalling stories from the old legends whispered in the forests. Wolves that were not just wolves, wolves that carried the souls of the fallen, wolves bound by curses, wolves that sought someone pure of heart. Could this be true? She shook her head, trying to clear the thought. Legends were stories. Stories were not real. But the wolf did not move to strike. It circled the pup slowly, sniffing and watching, as if weighing its very spirit. Leora's breath caught. She had been alone for so long, protecting and caring for a fragile life, and now here were 4 creatures, immense, shadowed, terrifying, yet not hostile. The 3 other wolves stepped forward, their movements in perfect harmony. Leora noticed their eyes, each a different shade of amber, gold, and dark brown. They carried power and a strange sorrow, as if the weight of centuries rested in their bones. She could sense it, the sorrow of exile, of loss, of a life that should have been. The alpha wolf stopped, ears twitching, gaze locked on hers. It was a silent communication, more profound than any words could be. Leora understood deep in her heart that this wolf, the leader, was no ordinary animal. It was a being of power and pain. And somehow the pup had drawn its attention. She knelt slowly, keeping her hands visible, trying not to show fear. "It's okay," she whispered to the wolf. "He's harmless. Please don't hurt him." The alpha's eyes softened just slightly and it stepped back. A small wind swirled around the clearing, carrying the scent of the forest and the scent of destiny, and the other three wolves mirrored the alpha's movements, giving the pup space. Leora's heart pounded. She did not know why they had come. Wolves did not simply appear like this. But she felt something shift in the air, a tension that was not threatening, yet charged. Something was calling to her, a force beyond understanding, deep and ancient. The wolves stayed at the edge of the clearing for what felt like hours, though the sun barely climbed higher. Leora moved cautiously, offering food to the pup, speaking softly, hoping to maintain the fragile truce. The alpha watched her, and she thought she saw recognition, not just of the pup but of her. Night began to fall, and the forest darkened into a velvet shadow. The wolves did not retreat. Instead, they settled near the tree line, bodies coiled like living statues, eyes gleaming. Leora felt a mix of fear and awe. These creatures were not ordinary beasts, they were something else. Something ancient, tied to the forest in ways she could not yet understand. She glanced at the pup, who yawned and stretched, unaware of the monumental moment. She laughed softly, a sound that trembled in the cold evening air. "Well, little one," she murmured, "I think we've found company, though I wish I knew why." The alpha wolf tilted its head, watching her every movement. Its gaze was steady, almost sentient, and for the first time Leora felt the weight of connection, an invisible thread linking her to these creatures. She felt seen, truly seen in a way she had never experienced. The wind carried a whisper, brushing her hair, rustling the leaves. She thought she heard voices, soft and echoing as if the forest itself were speaking to her. The wolves' presence was no accident. Some fate or curse or unseen power, had drawn them to her cabin, to the pup, to her very soul. As darkness fell completely, the alpha wolf stepped closer, its form massive and shadowed against the moonlight. The air seemed to thrum with energy. Leora's heart raced, and she clutched the pup to her chest. "What do you want from us?" she whispered, though she suspected the answer was something she was not yet ready to hear. The alpha paused, then lowered its head slightly, its glowing eyes fixed on hers. A shiver ran through her. In that moment she knew that her life, the quiet, lonely life she had built, was about to change forever. The forest seemed to hold its breath, waiting for what would come next. And then, without warning, one of the wolves, a smaller one, black as midnight, let out a long, mournful howl echoing through the trees, calling to something unseen. The sound was sorrowful, full of longing, and it reached deep into Leora's heart. She tightened her arms around the pup, a shiver of fear and anticipation running through her. The alpha's eyes bore into hers, and she realized the truth she had been trying to ignore. These were no ordinary wolves. Their arrival was not chance. And whatever bond was forming now would demand courage, sacrifice, and a heart willing to face darkness and longing alike. The forest settled into silence once more, but Leora knew this calm was only temporary. Something had begun, a story that would not let her remain the quiet, rejected Omega she had once been. Something ancient, dark, and powerful had come to her cabin, and she would have to face it. Her eyes met the alpha wolf's once more, and for the first time she felt the stirrings of hope amidst fear. "I do not know what you want," she whispered, "but we will see this together." The alpha lowered its head further, almost a nod, and the wind whispered through the trees, as if approving the choice. And in the shadows, beyond the firelight of the cabin, the forest seemed to wait, watching, knowing that the story of the Omega and the four black wolves had only just begun. End of Part 1 cliffhanger. Something ancient and powerful had arrived, and it had chosen her. The forest had changed since the arrival of the wolves. The mist now moved like a slow river, curling between the trunks of ancient trees as if guarding them. Shadows stretched long and strange, bending in ways that made Leora's heart race with both fear and fascination. The pup, once timid, now padded freely around the cabin, its small paws leaving prints in the soft earth. Yet despite the fragile sense of peace, tension lingered in the air. Leora had grown accustomed to their presence, but not to understanding it. Each morning she would wake to find the wolves waiting at the edge of the clearing, their eyes bright and intelligent, watching her as if measuring her every movement. The alpha, whom she had begun to think of as Kalen, held a commanding presence. He was immense, his fur like liquid night, with amber eyes that seemed to see into her soul. And yet there was something gentle beneath his strength, a sadness that mirrored her own. One morning, as the sun rose pale and silver through the mist, Leora approached the clearing with a bowl of porridge. The pup followed eagerly, tail wagging. The wolves waited silently, almost statuesque. Kalen stepped forward, lowering his massive head, sniffing the air around her. For a moment she thought he might attack, but then with a subtle flick of his ears, he turned and gestured with his gaze toward a narrow path in the trees. Leora frowned, unsure what he meant. The other wolves followed his lead, each moving carefully, watching her. Something unspoken passed between them, a call, a question, a silent invitation. She took a deep breath, clutching the pup, and followed them into the forest. The path led deeper than she had ever ventured, winding around gnarled roots and mossy rocks. The mist thickened, and the air grew heavier, charged with a strange energy that made her skin tingle. She realized that the forest itself seemed alive, reacting to the presence of the wolves. The leaves rustled without wind, and shadows shifted with purpose. At last they came to a small glade, hidden from sight by hanging vines. In the center lay a shallow pool, its surface smooth as glass, reflecting the gray sky above. The wolves circled the pool, moving with precision and grace. Kalen approached first, lowering his head until his muzzle nearly touched the water. He drank slowly, then lifted his gaze to hers, eyes bright with intelligence. Leora swallowed hard. I don't understand, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Why are you here? What are you? Kalen's ears twitched, and he emitted a low, rumbling growl, not a sound of anger, but one that seemed to carry words meant only for her to understand. And then it happened. In the silence of the glade, a shiver ran through the wolves' forms. Slowly before her eyes they began to change. Their massive bodies shrank, limbs elongated, and fur melted away into smooth human skin. Leora stumbled back, clutching the pup. Her heart pounded in her chest. 4 humans now stood before her, each tall and strong, with eyes that still held the glow of their wolf forms. Kalen, still the alpha, had sharp features and dark hair that fell to his shoulders, his eyes still amber, wild and intelligent. The others, his companions, mirrored his form, each unique in appearance, yet carrying the same quiet, dangerous grace. You're not wolves," Leora whispered, barely able to believe her eyes. Kalen stepped forward, his voice low and measured, carrying authority even in human form. "No," he said, "we are not, but we were once bound to these forms, cursed by betrayal, exiled from the kingdom we swore to protect. Until now, we have wandered this forest in shadow, neither man nor beast, seeking someone pure to restore us." Leora's hands shook. "Why me? Why here?" Kalen's gaze softened slightly, though his amber eyes still blazed with an intensity that made her heart ache. "Because you care," he said. "Because you see without fear. You showed kindness to one who is small, weak, and alone. The pup drew us to you." The words struck her with strange warmth. All her life she had been rejected for weakness, cast aside for not fitting the pack's rules. And now these 4 beings, mighty, exiled, cursed, had come to her. She felt both awe and fear, knowing that their presence carried power far beyond anything she had ever known. The other three warriors studied her quietly. One with dark brown hair and a quiet, thoughtful gaze stepped forward. "Do not fear us," he said softly. "We are bound to this place to her by more than chance. Our fate and yours are intertwined." Leora looked at the pup, who now sniffed at the edge of the glade, unaware of the gravity of the moment. Her mind raced, trying to make sense of it all. Wolves that were cursed humans, a life of exile, and a destiny that somehow included her. Kalen moved closer, his presence both overwhelming and strangely comforting. "We cannot return to our kingdom as we were," he said. "The curse that binds us is strong, but there is a way that requires courage, trust, and sacrifice." Leora's heart tightened. "What kind of sacrifice?" she asked, voice trembling. Kalen did not answer immediately. Instead, he tilted his head, studying her as if measuring the weight of her soul. "To save us," he said finally, "someone must open their heart fully. Someone must face the darkness without fear, without hesitation. That choice may change everything." The words left her breathless. She had known rejection, loneliness, and the cold judgment of her pack, but this was something far greater. The forest seemed to lean in, as if waiting for her decision. Over the next days, the wolves visited her cabin regularly. Each time, they would appear at the edge of the clearing, shifting seamlessly between human and wolf form, their eyes always on her. Leora began to sense their personalities. Kalen was commanding, controlled, and strong, yet beneath it lay sorrow and longing. Another, with quiet brown eyes, was gentle and observant, always watching, always waiting. The others carried loyalty, sharp wit, and a restrained fierceness that reminded her of how a pack could function when united. Leora began to speak to them, hesitantly at first, then with growing confidence. She fed them, shared stories of the forest, and discovered small comforts in their presence. And yet, the tension between her and Kalen was undeniable. Every glance, every touch, carried an unspoken charge. Fear, respect, fascination, and something darker, something neither dared to name, hung between them like the mist over the trees. The pup, oblivious to the complexity around him, grew bold, playing near the wolves, who allowed it with surprising patience. Watching him, Leora realized that trust could exist even in the shadow of fear. And perhaps, just perhaps, it could extend to her as well. But the forest was not quiet forever. From the edge of the clearing, shadows moved, figures that belonged to the nearby pack, the very pack that had rejected Leora. They had noticed her unusual visitors. Whispers carried on the wind, full of suspicion and malice. They did not understand what they saw. Wolves or humans or something in between, they only knew that Leora had formed bonds forbidden by their rules. Kalen noticed the movement first, ears twitching, eyes narrowing. "They are watching," he said quietly. "Soon they may come closer. You must be ready." Leora's stomach twisted. She had avoided the pack for years, fleeing their scorn and cruelty. And now she was tied to beings more powerful than she had ever imagined, and the pack's attention brought danger closer than ever. Night fell, and with it came the first howl of warning. It was neither human nor wolf, but something in between, echoing across the trees. The wolves responded, low growls vibrating through the air, a chorus of strength and vigilance. Leora felt both fear and awe. She understood now. She was part of this story, whether she chose it or not. Kalen stepped closer, his gaze locking onto hers. "Leora," he said softly, voice carrying warmth and command at the same time, "we cannot face what is coming alone. If you wish to help us, if you wish to keep the forest, the pup, and yourself safe, you must trust me, trust all of us." She met his amber eyes, the pull of his presence undeniable. Her mind raced, heart pounding, but she nodded slowly. I will try," she said, voice trembling but steady. The alpha lowered his head, a silent acknowledgement, and the others followed suit. Around them, the forest seemed to hold its breath, watching, waiting, as if the trees themselves knew that a bond had been forged, one that could break curses, shift destinies, and awaken powers long dormant. And as the first light of dawn touched the clearing, Leora realized something profound. Her quiet life of exile and sorrow had ended. She was no longer simply a rejected Omega. She had become a keeper of secrets, a guardian of the cursed, and perhaps the only one who could guide them toward freedom. But deep in the shadows, beyond the edge of the glade, the eyes of the nearby pack glimmered, filled with suspicion and intent. Danger was coming, and the forest, the wolves, and Leora herself would soon be tested in ways none of them could yet imagine. The forest had grown darker in both light and spirit. Mist clung to the trees like silent sentinels, and the wind whispered secrets Leora could almost understand. The wolves, Kalen and his three companions, moved through the trees with an elegance that blurred the line between beast and human. Leora had begun to understand them in ways she could not fully explain. They were cursed warriors trapped between two worlds, yet their hearts still burned with honor, loyalty, and sorrow. Days passed, each filled with quiet lessons and subtle bonds. Leora learned to follow the wolves' movements, their silent communication, the way they anticipated danger. The pup, ever curious and brave, darted among the warriors, who allowed it near but never fully relaxed. The sight of the small, trusting creature brought warmth to Leora's heart, a reminder of innocence amid shadows and power. Kalen often stayed close to her, his amber eyes watching more than the forest or the pup. He watched her. Each glance carried an unspoken weight, a mixture of command and care, sorrow and longing. Leora felt a strange tension every time he approached. Fear mingled with fascination, caution with a curious draw she did not understand. And Kalen, despite his commanding presence, seemed equally affected by her. One evening, as the sun dipped low and the forest glowed in gold and shadow, Leora sat by the fire in her cabin, preparing a meal. Kalen crouched nearby, still in wolf form, though the edges of his human nature shimmered in the firelight. He studied her silently, every movement deliberate as though memorizing her. "You grow stronger," he said softly, his voice a low rumble that made her glance up. "Not just in body and heart." Leora paused, spoon in hand. "Stronger. I don't know if I deserve it," she admitted. The words were heavy, the truth raw. "I've always been weaker than others, rejected, alone." Kalen tilted his head, amber eyes reflecting the fire. "Strength is not only in power or speed," he said. "It is in survival, in kindness, in caring for those who cannot defend themselves. That is strength few possess. You have it, Leora, whether you see it or not." Her cheeks warmed. Few had ever spoken to her with such honesty, without judgment or ridicule. Her life had been full of rejection, the cold judgment of her own kind pressing on her since childhood. And now, this being, this cursed alpha, recognized her for who she truly was. The night deepened, and with it, the forest seemed to close in, shadows stretching, shifting with quiet intent. Leora felt the pull of destiny around them. The wolves' curse was no longer distant. It hovered in the air, waiting for the right moment, the right choice, the right heart. Days later, Kalen finally revealed more of their secret. They had been noble warriors in a kingdom ruled by a tyrant king. Their loyalty had been absolute, their courage unmatched. But betrayal had struck them, an act of envy and fear, and they had been cursed, transformed into wolves, exiled to the forest to wander in shadow. They could not return to human life, could not reclaim their honor until someone of pure heart chose to help them. Leora listened, heart aching at the weight of their story. The parallels were uncanny. She, rejected and cast aside, they betrayed and exiled. And yet in that shared pain there was understanding, a bridge forming between hearts scarred by the world. The tension between her and Kalen grew, subtle but undeniable. Moments of quiet intimacy emerged, shared warmth by the fire, small touches while feeding the pup, unspoken communication in the forest. Each glance, each brush of their hands carried emotion deeper than words. Fear, trust, fascination, and something stronger, desire, though unspoken, wove through them like the wind through the trees. But the forest did not remain quiet. The pack that had once rejected Leora had noticed her unusual companions. They watched from the shadows, whispering, plotting. They did not understand the wolves' secret, only that their presence challenged the pack's authority. One morning, as Leora led the pup along a familiar path, Kalen stopped, ears twitching, muscles coiled. He growled low, warning of approaching danger. Shadows moved in the underbrush, figures emerging. The nearby pack, their eyes hard with suspicion and intent. Leora's pulse quickened. This was no longer a test of understanding or trust. It was a threat. Kalen's stance shifted, his body low, ready to defend. The others mirrored him, their forms blurring between wolf and human as they prepared. Leora felt fear, but also a surge of determination. She could not flee, not when the pup's safety and the wolves' fragile trust depended on her courage. The pack stepped into the clearing, sneers curling their lips. "The Omega thinks she can hide with wolves," one growled. "She will return to her rightful place." Kalen's amber eyes locked on the speaker. "She belongs here," he said, voice calm but carrying the weight of command. "And we do not answer to you." A tense silence fell. Then a rush of movement, wolves lunging, humans charging, a clash of strength and strategy. Leora stayed close, guiding the pup to safety while Kalen and his companions defended the clearing. Magic, ancient and wild, seemed to ripple in the forest. Shadows bent, wind howled, and the earth itself seemed to tremble under the force of power unleashed. In the chaos, Leora felt something awaken within her, a quiet strength she had never known. She could sense the wolves' forms, their intentions, their need for protection. Her hands brushed the pup and a subtle warmth pulsed through her, as if the forest itself responded to her courage. The air shimmered with possibility, and she realized that the prophecy Kalen had hinted at might be true. Her heart, her pure intent, could influence the curse. The battle reached its peak. Kalen fought with ferocity, his form shifting seamlessly between wolf and human, eyes blazing amber as he met the pack's strongest warriors. Leora, heart-pounding, guided the pup through hidden paths, whispering encouragement, feeling the pulse of the forest beneath her feet. But just as it seemed the pack might retreat, a sudden strike caught Kalen off guard. He fell, a massive form collapsing, eyes wide in shock. The forest seemed to shiver in response. Leora ran to him, heart in her throat, kneeling beside his immense form. His breathing was heavy, uneven, yet his eyes found hers, bright and full of trust. "You," he whispered, voice strained, "do not falter." Tears welled in her eyes. She had faced rejection, fear, and loneliness. But she could not falter now, not when he, the wolves, and the pup depended on her. She pressed her hand to his chest, feeling the slow pulse of life, and instinctively something within her surged. Warmth, light, energy, flowing from her heart into his, binding them, connecting them, as if the forest itself lent its strength. The air around them shimmered and Kalen's breathing steadied. The pack, sensing the bond, hesitated, fear flickering in their eyes. Slowly they withdrew into the shadows, leaving the clearing and the glade in silence once more. Leora sank to the ground beside Kalen, holding him close. The pup nuzzled against her, unaware of the gravity of what had just occurred. The other wolves circled, cautious but calm, acknowledging her courage and the strength of the bond forming between her and Kalen. Kalen's amber eyes met hers, filled with a mix of gratitude, awe, and a quiet, simmering emotion that Leora could not yet name. "You saved me," he said softly, voice trembling with something unspoken. "No," she whispered back, voice shaking. "We saved each other." The forest seemed to exhale, the mist curling in gentle patterns, the trees rustling softly as if acknowledging the moment. Leora realized that this was only the beginning. The wolves' curse was not fully broken, the pack's threat was not gone, and her heart had begun to awaken to emotions she had never dared to feel. And in the shadows, the distant howl of another presence echoed, a reminder that the world beyond the clearing still watched, still waited. Leora's journey was far from over. She had taken the first step, but the path ahead would demand courage, sacrifice, and a heart willing to face darkness without fear. The pull between her and Kaelin had grown undeniable, a silent, burning tension that neither could ignore. Yet the curse lingered, the forest trembled, and the threat of the pack loomed. Leora understood now that her quiet life of exile had ended. She was no longer just the rejected Omega. She was part of a story of power, redemption, and destiny, and her choices would shape not only her fate but the fate of those who had come to trust her. The forest lay in stillness that night, yet the air was thick with anticipation. Shadows clung to the trees like watchful guardians, and the mist rolled over the forest floor in quiet swirls. Leora stood at the edge of her clearing, the pup nestled at her feet, eyes wide and alert. Kaelin and the other three wolves, still partially human now, their forms shifting subtly between wolf and man, stood beside her, tense and ready. The howl that had echoed through the forest in the previous days had returned, louder and deeper, carrying an unfamiliar weight. Leora felt it in her chest, a vibration that pulsed with both fear and power. Whatever was coming, it was ancient, dark, and unstoppable, or so it seemed. Kaelin stepped closer, his amber eyes glowing in the pale moonlight. His voice was calm but firm, resonating with authority. "This is the moment, Leora. The choice is yours. To save us, to save the forest, you must face the darkness fully. There is no turning back." Leora's heart pounded. She thought of the pup, of the forest she loved, of the wolves who had shown her trust when the world had rejected her. She thought of the moments of warmth beside the fire, the quiet conversations in the glade, the pull she felt toward Kaelin, a bond growing stronger with every heartbeat. She began, faltering as doubt crept into her mind. "I don't know if I'm strong enough." Kaelin reached for her hand, his touch grounding her. "Strength is not measured by the battles you fight outside," he said softly. "It is measured by the courage to face what is inside. You have that courage, Leora, I see it, always have." The other wolves gathered around her, forming a circle. Their presence was comforting, protective, yet fierce. Each bore the marks of their curse, shadows lingering in their amber and brown eyes, but also a deep trust in Leora, as if she alone could guide them to freedom. Then the howl came again, closer this time. From the shadows beyond the trees, shapes began to move. Figures cloaked in darkness, eyes gleaming with unnatural light. The pack, the very same that had rejected Leora, now approached, but they were not ordinary wolves or humans. The curse in the forest seemed to stir in response, twisting shadows and mist into forms that obscured the intruders, making them larger, more threatening than before. Kaelin growled low in his throat, muscles coiled. The other wolves bristled, their forms shifting seamlessly between man and wolf as they prepared for battle. Leora, heart in her throat, stepped forward. The pup whined softly, hiding behind her legs. She knew the moment had come. She could no longer stand on the sidelines. Her choice would determine everything. Closing her eyes, Leora took a deep breath. She thought of the pup, of the forest, of Kaelin and the others. She thought of the pain of rejection, the loneliness she had endured, and the strength that had grown quietly inside her over the years. And then she reached deep within herself, to a place of light, of pure intent, and let it flow outward. The air around her shimmered. The trees seemed to lean closer, the mist swirling like smoke from a sacred flame. The wolves looked at her with awe, sensing the power rising from her heart. Leora felt warmth, energy, and courage pulsing through her, intertwining with the magic of the forest. Kaelin's eyes met hers, amber and alive. "You are ready," he whispered. With a sudden surge, the shadows beyond the clearing lunged. The hostile pack attacked, but Leora did not flee. She raised her hands, letting the energy within her spill outward. Light radiated from her, bright but soft, like the first glow of dawn breaking through night. The figures faltered, recoiling from the purity and courage in her heart. Kaelin and the other wolves charged, their forms flowing between human and beast with incredible speed and power. The battle was fierce, a dance of strength and magic, of instinct and intent. Leora moved among them, her heart guiding the energy, her hands shaping the force that protected her allies. Every blow struck by Kaelin and his companions was enhanced by her courage, every step fortified by her will. The pup barked once, a small, urgent cry, and Leora smiled, feeling hope bloom in the chaos. They were not alone. The forest itself responded, the trees leaning, roots twisting, and mist curling to shield them. Light and shadow clashed, but her determination held firm. And then, at the center of the clearing, Kaelin faced the leader of the hostile pack, a towering figure of darkness, eyes glowing like coals, teeth bared. For a moment, time seemed to stop. Leora felt the pull of destiny stronger than ever. She took a step forward, placing a hand on Kaelin's shoulder. "Together," she said. Kaelin nodded, his eyes burning with trust in something deeper, something unspoken yet undeniable. In that instant they were united, not just in battle but in bond. The energy from Leora surged through the wolves, and Kaelin lunged forward with a strength unmatched, striking with precision and fury. The other wolves followed, their forms blurring, shadows and light twisting around them. The darkness of the hostile pack began to falter, their shapes wavering as the purity of Leora's intent and the wolves' strength combined. One by one, they fell back, retreating into the mist from which they had emerged. The forest seemed to exhale, the tension easing as the final figures vanished into the shadows. Leora sank to the ground, exhausted but triumphant. Kaelin knelt beside her, his hand brushing her cheek gently. You saved us," he said, voice low and full of awe. "You saved us all." Tears filled her eyes, not of fear or sadness, but of relief, pride, and a quiet, blossoming joy. She looked at Kaelin, at the wolves who had become her companions, and realized that she had found something she never thought possible: belonging, acceptance, and a bond stronger than any curse. The pup nuzzled her, tail wagging, and Leora laughed softly. "We did it," she said. "All of us." Kaelin's gaze softened, amber eyes reflecting the firelight. "No," he corrected gently. "You did it, you let us through. Without your courage, none of us would have survived." Her cheeks flushed. She had always thought herself weak, unworthy, and rejected. But now, in the glow of the clearing, surrounded by the beings who trusted and valued her, she understood. Strength is born not just from power, but from heart, compassion, and the courage to face darkness without fear. The wolves shifted back into human form fully, their cursed bodies now free from shadow. Kaelin stood, brushing his hands over his dark hair, his expression a mix of gratitude and something deeper, more intimate. Leora felt the pull between them, a bond forged not just in battle but in trust, care, and shared destiny. The forest seemed to hum, alive with magic and life. The mist lifted slightly, revealing the stars above, twinkling like distant flames. Leora felt the pulse of the forest, the heartbeat of the earth beneath her feet. She had become more than a rejected Omega. She was a guardian, a keeper, a bridge between worlds, and a source of hope for those bound by darkness. Kaelin approached, placing a hand over hers. "You are more than I ever imagined," he whispered. "More than I dared hope for." Leora looked into his amber eyes, and in that moment she felt the depth of the bond they shared. She had faced fear, rejection, and shadows both within and without, and now, standing in the quiet aftermath, she understood that she was loved, valued, and accepted. The other wolves gathered around, their eyes reflecting relief, respect, and loyalty. The pup barked happily, running in circles around their feet. The forest seemed to breathe again, light and shadow dancing in harmony. But even in this moment of triumph, Leora knew their story was far from over. The forest still held secrets, The world still held danger, and the bonds they had forged would continue to be tested. Yet, for the first time, she felt ready. She was no longer alone. She had allies, companions, and a heart strong enough to face whatever lay ahead. Kalen knelt before her one last time, his amber eyes locked onto hers. "We are free thanks to you," he said softly, "and I am yours if you will have me." Leora's chest swelled with emotion. She reached out, taking his hand firmly. "And I am yours," she whispered, voice trembling with joy and certainty. "All of us together." The forest seemed to celebrate, the wind carrying the scent of pine and earth, the stars above twinkling like silent witnesses. The shadows of the past had been faced, the curse broken, and a bond forged stronger than any darkness. The pup yipped, bouncing between them, as if celebrating the victory as well. Leora laughed softly, tears of relief and happiness streaming down her face. She had been rejected once, shunned by her own kind, but now she was part of something greater, a family, a pack, a bond that transcended worlds. The four wolves, now restored to human form, stood around her, their expressions reflecting gratitude, awe, and a quiet respect. Kalen pulled her close, his warmth enveloping her, a silent promise of protection and partnership. And as the moon rose high, casting silver light over the clearing, Leora realized that the forest, the pup, and the wolves were no longer bound by fear, darkness, or rejection. They were free together.